Do you want to know if you're on track to your retirement, but you don't want to spend all that time on a complicated analysis? Well, in this video, I'm going to share with you how you can assess your retirement, where you are, and whether or not you're on track in less than 5 minutes. So grab a piece of paper and let's see if you're on track to your retirement. If we haven't met yet, I'm Johnathan Rankin, the founder of Theorem Wealth Management. We're a retirement planning firm that's been helping people plan and execute their retirement goals for going on 20 years now. One of the things that makes retirement planning so complicated is how far into the future it is and how unknown that future might look like and may be. It's just like having the goal of losing weight, getting into shape, and getting healthy. There are a number of labs and tests and exercises that you can run to see whether or not you're on track to getting healthier. And for those people, that's the scale. They hop on the scale. Is it going up? Is it going down? Are they making progress to what they want to accomplish? Whether or not that's the right measurement, it's at least a measurement in their mind where they can at least assess, are they making progress? And for a long-term goal like retirement, it's pretty similar. There are so many detailed, comprehensive planning exercises that we can go through like we do with the clients that we work with, where we can assess whether or not they're on track today. We can add in multiple goals. We can assess for different scenarios, and we can factor in for so many different things. But what if you wanted the equivalent version of stepping on the scale? Just a quick way to assess whether or not you're on track, whether or not you're making progress to your goals, and just a way to overall assess your retirement health. Because it's one thing to look at an account statement and see a dollar figure there, but for a lot of people, they have a hard time conceptualizing what is that long-term dollar figure going to eventually be? How much am I going to be able to live off of with that dollar figure? An account statement or an investment statement from a 401k is just that. It's a statement in time of a balance in history. But for a lot of people, they want to be able to see, okay, what is that eventually going to get me in retirement? And let me be able to assess that. But let me do it in a way that's just like stepping onto a scale. What's a quick way I can do that? So let me show you how you can assess whether or not you're on track in less than 5 minutes. So grab a piece of paper, let's set the timer, and let's get started. So the first thing that you're going to write down is we're going to start with where you're at today. So how much do you have total saved? This is the total amount. This isn't based on each individual bucket. This is your 401ks, your IRAs, your brokerage accounts, your savings accounts, anything that's contributing to your retirement. That's the total you want to write down. So in this example, we're going to write down the total is $500,000. So you got $500,000, and if you're saving into a 401k, let's just assume, and in this case, this person is, so saving into a 401k, you're going to write down the yearly contributions, and you're going to include the company match. So in this case, we're going to assume that the contributions with the match are $16,000. So we got $16,000 that's being added every single year. Now, the next thing that we're going to want to write down is how many years left until your retirement. So in this case, we're going to put that the years left is 20 years. So you got 20 years until you want to retire. You got $500,000 today. You're saving $16,000 every single year. And we're going to put that the growth rate, we're just going to assume it's 7%. So this is going to be very simple. We're not going to get into asset allocation or are you mainly in stocks or are you mainly in bonds. We're just going to look at just if you were to earn 7% on these investments and you continue to contribute $16,000 a year, what is that going to get you? So to figure that out, we're going to use what's called the rule of 72. The rule of 72 says that if you take 72 and you divide it by what your growth rate is, that's how long it's going to take for the assets to double. So in this case, it's just about 10 years that the assets will double, assuming a 7% rate of return. So we're going to assume that that $500,000 will quadruple and become $2 million in 20 years. So if the $500,000 becomes 2 million, and then we've got to factor in the growth of the contributions. So the contributions over the course of the next 20 years, you're going to contribute $320,000. So it's 300. Now that $320,000, that's what's been contributed by you and your employer, but that doesn't factor in any growth. So to do that, we got to go back to that rule 72. Now, not every dollar was put in day one, and not every dollar was put in on the very last day. So we look at the average time invested for those dollars is 10 years. So we'll just assume that that $320,000 will double in 10 years, adding $640,000 to the overall. So when we add those two together, that's $2,640,000 that eventually should be had in the savings account. And whether that's 401ks, different buckets. So your savings and contributions over the next 20 years should grow to $2,640,000. This is just an estimate. This is just a quick back of the napkin math. So $2,640,000, what can that get you? This is where we'll use the 4% rule, that rule of thumb saying that you can safely withdraw 4% from your portfolio over the course of time and not run out of money. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna multiply that 2 million by 4%. And that's gonna give us, thanks to Apple Intelligence, $105,600. So that will generate you $105,600 in 20 years from now. Well, now that 20 years from now, that's not in today's dollars. So now we got to factor in inflation this. And if we assumed a 2% inflation rate, that means that 2.6 million is roughly about $1.75 million in today's dollars. So how do we figure out whether or not you're on track? This is great information knowing that, hey, my savings could eventually get to $105,000, but how do I know what I'm going to be spending down the road? So here's what I usually tell people to do. Let's take your current pay right now. Whatever your take home is, let's look at the net paycheck that you're getting. That's going to not factor in things like healthcare or 401k contributions. What is your net pay? So in this example, let's say that the net pay is $10,000 every single month. Now the simple question is, how much is left at the end of every single month? Sometimes it could be zero, sometimes it could be something. What is that number? So you want to write down how much is left at the end of every single month. So in this case, let's assume that at the end of every single month, they've got $1,500 that's being saved. So they're really spending $8,500 every single month. So every single year, that's going to be $102,000 every single year that's needed to maintain their lifestyle. So in this case, this person, if they had $102,000 that was dropped into their bank account January 1st, they should be able to live their life. Now, that's in today's dollars. So how do we factor that in for future dollars? So now we've got to figure out what that $102,000 is going to be 20 years from now. The way we do that is we come up with our inflation multiplier. So the way that formula works, and thanks to things like Apple Intelligence on an iPad or AI, things like that can help be done for you. And I'll show you how to do that now, but you're going to take 1 plus the inflation rate by a factor of the number of years until your retirement. So in this case, we're going to take 1.02 to a factor of 20. And that's going to equal 1.486. So we'll just round up to 1.5. So we're going to take $102,000, multiply that by 1.5. That's going to get us $153,000. That's what we're planning for. So we're going to need $153,000 to live off of in 20 years, but our savings is only going to generate a little over $105,000. So there is a gap there. Now remember, this is just very basic looking at expenses. This isn't digging deep into understanding that expenses are going to change over the next 20 years. My guess is that you're going to have some things come and go, but this is looking at it as of today. If you were to retire, maintaining your lifestyle today, what would that look like? So in this case, there would be a gap. Now that gap can be made up from a number of different things, whether that's Social Security, pensions, whether it's increased growth. I mean, in this example, we're factoring a 7% growth rate. So what if you made more than that or invested a little bit more aggressively? What if you added other streams of income? One of the things I don't like that people do when planning for their retirement expenses is they start to justify different expenses over the course of the years. So for example, maybe last year you had to replace the air conditioner. This year you've got to replace the roof. Next year, maybe it's a new car that needs replaced. And so when coming up with that budget, a lot of those numbers start to get taken out of the budget, even though it may not be the roof every single year that needs replaced, but it's always something. So that's why I like to factor in, what did you actually save at the end of every single month? So let's just look at what was spent. Dollars in, dollars out. Let's not look at where it's going, just dollars in, dollars out to give us a very general look at whether or not I'm on track. So if I was this person, I see that I've got a little over a $40,000 gap, I'd look at that and go, how am I going to make that up? Is Social Security going to be enough to make up that gap? Am I going to have to reduce expenses, or are there ways where I can start saving more now? I've got a 20-year head start to be able to start planning for this. This just gives me a good starting point to know, okay, maybe I need to make some adjustments. If it was the opposite, let's say that the savings were able to generate $150,000, but you only were living off $105,000. Well, that's a very easy way to look at it and say, I'm doing the right things. It's not a detailed plan. It's not granular. We're just looking at the high level overview. It's like stepping on the scale just to see whether or not you're on track. And so there are a number of different levers that you can pull when you get to this phase. You can save more. You've got a long time frame for that. You can invest a little more aggressively. Obviously, that's going to come with more risk. Over a 20-year time frame, maybe you can get your rate of return over that 7% that we're assuming right now. You can add different sources of income. So figure out ways over the next 20 years, how can you supplement your retirement income? There's so many things you can do in a 20-year time span as long as you're starting to look at it 20 years in advance. Where I see people go wrong is that they want to make big retirement changes or fix retirement problems the year or two before they retire. If you're doing this early enough, you should be able to start making some adjustments early on. This is one way where you can actually start looking at, okay, what are your balances today and what does that mean long term for you? Because a lot of people, as I mentioned, look at the screen on their 401k or their brokerage statements and they go, that's great, I've got dollars there. But what does this actually mean in terms of my long-term retirement life? As I mentioned, this is one simple way to look at it. This is not the most accurate. There's so many different ways where you can get really granular. Same thing with health. You can do all the labs, all the tests, all the experiments to figure out how healthy you are. Same thing with this. As you go through this exercise yourself, share in the comments whether or not this was accurate for you or was it way off. And if you want to see how the numbers compare to a detailed analysis, then use the link in the description and schedule a free comprehensive retirement analysis. Our commitment to you is that if you're taking the time to do the math yourself, then our team will help you compare that math to a full retirement plan. We look forward to hearing from you, and if you found this video helpful, do me a favor and support what we do by hitting that subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and make sure you check out this video coming up next. I will see you there.